Hey, my beautiful saucies. So, I was just kind of looking through YouTube, bored after work, looking through, scrolling up and down, trying to see what's interesting, and I came across this one channel. The name of the channel, I believe, is Cruise Season, and I noticed that there was a video that posed the question, "Does light skin privilege exist?" And it was a group of dark skin and light skinned people arguing in a room. Looks like they were like in a barber shop. And the conversation included MLS men and women and unambiguous dark skinned black men and women. And they were having a heated discussion because the dark skinned black woman right here was trying to tell the light skinned young lady right there in the green how privileged she is and how she doesn't understand what dark skinned people go through on a day-to-day basis. And the light skin, and basically they were saying that light skinned people don't understand colorism, and that they're privileged and that they're in a much better position, and that they don't understand, the lighter skinned people don't understand how privileged they are. And the lighter skinned people were making an argument like, well, first of all, like, we do know that colorism exists, because that's what basically the darker skinned people were trying to tell light skinned people, that colorism exists and they don't acknowledge it, and basically, in so many words, accusing the light skinned people of being colorist towards unambiguous dark skinned people. And the same stuff, the same rhetoric that Chrissy and her followers were trying to accuse light skinned people of for so many years. And the light skinned people were trying to pretty much defend themselves, saying that they feel like that, because this MLS man right here was saying that he believes that there's an anger directed towards lighter skinned people by the unambiguous dark skinned community. And they were trying to justify that anger toward light skinned people by saying that we're privileged and that we don't understand colorism, and that they are frustrated with us because we don't acknowledge our privilege and this and that. So there was just a really heated argument. So the darker skinned woman told the lighter skinned woman that, to white people, we're just all N-words. And then the darker skinned guy stood up and was telling the lighter skinned people, just trying to make an argument, saying that, well, if Obama didn't look the way he did, he never would have became president. And see how they just moved the goalpost, and they were just kind of like contradicting themselves. So this is the reason why I feel like the exotical space is so triggering, and why it is needed, because we shed light on the contradictions and how unambiguous dark-skinned black people keep moving the goalposts when they're talking about colorism. It's like, we as light-skinned people, we understand colorism. But what we don't understand is why you keep trying to accuse us of being the colorists of the black community. We understand colorism. We just don't understand why you're discussing it that way. Why are you trying to paint us with one brush? One minute you're saying that light-skinned people are just the average N-word to a white person and that we're no different. And then in the next breath, they brought up President Obama and how President Obama would have made it to where he was had he not been a biracial man. So which is it? That's a contradiction right there. As if unambiguous dark-skinned black people were not a part of his fan base or his voting bloc. Two, as if they did not push for his election as well. So it's a contradiction, and this is one of the reasons why I think the exotical space is so needed and why it is so triggering, because we look at these little nuanced discussions and we point out a lot of hypocrisy and how unambiguous dark-skinned black people like to move the goalpost to illustrate their point. And it's always coming from us a position of victimhood, where they always feel like somebody else is victimizing them. Light-skinned people, MLS people, know that there's colorism that exists. We know that already. I mean, what the fuck are you telling us for? We know that already. But what we don't understand is, why do you keep trying to paint us as the colorists of the black community? That is the problem. And nobody ever wants to call out the fact that unambiguous dark-skinned black men, because in this video, they kept on talking about social settings. In a social setting, a lighter-skinned person is more preferred and more pedestalized and sought after in the black community than dark-skinned black people. But nobody wants to talk about how unambiguous dark-skinned black men are just as pedestalized in the black community as biracial black women or light-skinned black women or mixed-race black women. It is unambiguous dark-skinned black men who continuously curb unambiguous dark-skinned black women so that they can talk to a biracial or light-skinned woman. Nobody talks about how there are unambiguous dark-skinned black women who tell their sons not to bring home, and their daughters, don't bring home somebody that's too dark if you're already dark-skinned, because you don't want dark-skinned babies. Nobody ever wants to talk about the colorism that unambiguous dark-skinned black people inflict on each other. Nobody wants to talk about the racial politics or the prejudice or colorism or whatever the fuck you want to call it when dark-skinned black women tell light-skinned men they're too light, and I don't like light skins. But if a light skin, like an MLS man, told her that I don't do dark-skinned women, all hell would break loose. And now they've gotten like lighter-skinned women being ashamed of being light-skinned, and they have MLS people in the black community that are constantly trying to prove their blackness all the time. Or you have a lot of light-skinned women or biracial women who intentionally go after darker skinned men to breed out the light skin. So they shame you every single chance they get for being an MLS person in the black community. Nobody ever wants to talk about that colorism, but they always want to paint MLS people as being the colorists of the black community. So that's why I think another reason why the exotical space is needed. Also, one question I would like to ask these dark-skinned black people in this room, if I were standing there, I would ask them, why was Malcolm X so passionate in his activism to the point where he gave his life to further the plight of black people? Why was Nat Turner willing to die to stage a slave uprising? And Nat Turner was a mulatto or a light-skinned, light-complected black man. And he died he did stage a uprising. Why did Farrakhan and Farad Muhammad and Elijah Muhammad give their lives and dedicate their lives to furthering the plight of black people? Why did Malcolm X die for this community if he was not a part of it, if he didn't feel the racial prejudice and hatred? How was he able to articulate his activism the way he was, or articulate his points the way that he was, or articulate the racial hatred that was felt by so many black people? Why was Frederick Douglass able to articulate the racial hatred and the horrors of chattel slavery in his speeches? And why was he so passionate in his abolitionism if he was just so privileged as a biracial mulatto? If we have so much privilege, then why were so many of the black greats MLS people? Why were they so popular? Why did they stand out so much? Why did Rosa Parks go to jail to make a stand and not give up her seat? So, I mean, why would they do that? Malcolm X could have sat on his privileged light-skinned ass and raised his children and enjoyed his marriage to Betty Shabazz. He could have sat down and not said a damn thing, and he would have lived to be 99, probably 100 years old. Frederick Douglass's second wife was a white woman, and Frederick Douglass himself was a biracial or mulatto man. He was still very, very passionate in his abolitionist views nonetheless, where you see dark skin, like unambiguous dark skinned black men who are in interracial relationships, and they simp and they kiss ass and they just, bow down and kowtow to the powers that be. Clarence Thomas, even Jesse Williams, as annoying as he is, being a biracial man, still found the time to speak out on black issues, regardless of what the repercussions would be, regarding his career. And the same thing goes for Kaepernick. The biggest simps usually a lot of times in prominent positions who have lots and lots of money are dark-skinned, unambiguous black people. A lot of them, especially the men. You have countless rappers, countless athletes who are unambiguous dark-skinned black people, and they do not give back to their own community or speak out on black issues. You have a few that do, but for the vast majority, a lot of them do not. They make it out of the hood and they don't look back. And they do it very unapologetically. So also in this video, you have toward the end, lighter skinned people were being basically gaslit, and they were emotionally triggered, so they lost focus, and they were not able to point out the hypocrisies or how the unambiguous dark-skinned black people were contradicting themselves or moving the goalpost. And so it ended pretty much with them apologizing, almost like, well, what can we as light-skinned people do? And my answer to your question, my dear, is nothing. There's nothing you can do to make relations between unambiguous dark-skinned black people and MLS people better in a lot of cases. Some cases you can, some cases it'll work, but a lot of times we are usually the ones who are catching all the smoke, who they direct their attitudes and their anger towards for colorism. When a lot of times, if you ask a lot of dark-skinned black people this question, who have you experienced the most colorism from? And they will tell you it's other unambiguous dark-skinned black people. They call each other nappy-headed. They diss each other and curb each other and refuse to date each other. They do that. They shame light-skinned people each and every chance they get for being light-skinned and make you feel like you have to be some kind of race warrior or some kind of like activist in order to prove to them how black you are. And they tell you that from the time you were a little kid. In a lot of black families, they do that to the lighter skin or the biracial children. Look at Amanda Seales. Look at what they're saying about Drake. Drake is not strong enough in his activism, or he's not an activist at all. He never speaks up for the black community, this and that. But they don't say anything about Lil Wayne or anybody else that's dark, that's like unambiguous dark-skinned black people who don't speak out or who don't give back. They don't mention those people. But for some reason, Drake is expected to be this activist and speak up for the black community in order to quote unquote prove himself to the black community. And so that's why I think that the exotical space is needed, because not only do we say, yeah, okay, there are privileges to being an MLS person, and so we're acknowledging it. And not only are we acknowledging it, but we're discussing different ways to get more privileges and to stack our privileges and social climb even further, unapologetically. And to me, in my personal opinion, I think Amanda Seales is a fool. I think any MLS person would be a damn fool. Speak out if you must, sure, but it's not going to be appreciated, and you're going to ruin your career doing it. And they're not going to come back. Unambiguous dark-skinned black people are not going to come back and pick you up and lift you up and rebuild your career or support you when you decide to step out there and make that move and speak on black issues, and you lose your career in the process, or you have this kind of self-sacrificial behavior. They're not going to appreciate it anyway. They're not going to appreciate it, and they're not going to support you while you're doing it. You're just going to be sitting there. You're just going to lose everything you worked for all of your life for this community. That's just going to turn on you anyway. They don't want you to be proud of who you are. They don't want you to love who you are, how you look, or the fact that you have admixtures, or the fact that you are an MLS person. You're supposed to walk around depressed and hating yourself and hating your blackness. And then when you go and date that unambiguous dark-skinned black man or whatever and try to weed out your dark skin, the light skin, so that you don't have light-skinned babies, nobody gives a fuck. They're not going to care about your low self-esteem or ask you, why are you doing that? They're going to give you praise, because being light-skinned and loving the fact that you are light-skinned or loving yourself just the way you are is like taboo in the black community. And they always boast about the diversity and black people started the whole world and everything like that. but you're not supposed to appreciate any part of you except for blackness, or just appreciate your blackness. And they always tell you, oh, God don't make mistakes, God don't make mistakes. I guess that only applies to them. It doesn't apply to anybody else. When you are a light-skinned person or a mixed race person in the black community, then you are supposed to be ashamed of that, or not like that, or not embrace it. And it's just hypocrisy and internalized self-hate all over the place. And it's dysfunctional and it's toxic, and nobody calls it out ever. And that's why the Exoticals too are an appreciated space by MLS women, because we speak out about that. We call attention to those kinds of behaviors and that kind of mindset and call it out, and then we reinforce pride, self-esteem for MLS women and MLS people in general. And now even the MLS men are speaking out and making content to reinforce MLS pride amongst the men and call out the hypocrisies of the black community too, and the toxic behaviors as well. And it's often interpreted as, like, MLS pride is always interpreted as like, well, if you're proud to be MLS, then that must mean you hate unambiguous dark-skinned black people, and that's not the case. That's not the case. And if you interpret someone else having pride in themselves as hatred for you, I advise you to seek help, seek therapy, because something is wrong with you. Nobody takes it wrong or takes it like that, or takes it like you're being anti something else when you boast about how beautiful your dark skin is, or how your melanin is popping, or how you're a black queen or black girl magic, or any of those kinds of things, or those kinds of expressions. Nobody talks about that as if it's being anti something else. So yeah, this is my video. I just had to make some commentary on this because this is a regular thing. Before the Exotical space became a thing, it was videos like this all over YouTube, just all over the place, calling out light skin privilege and we're this and we're that for years, literally for years. And the Exotical space is popping because we respectfully, or at least as respectful as we can be, to people that are constantly disrespecting us, but we call out these behaviors and point out little nuanced toxicities in the behaviors and the talking points, and kind of blow that shit out of the water. So I thank you so much for listening. I love you. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share the video, and make a comment down below about what you think. But I would advise you to go on over to that channel and view the whole thing, because I don't do clips on my channel. I usually do screenshots and just talk about it and make my commentary about it. But I'm going to start doing clips too pretty soon as well, so that I can grow my channel. It'll make it more interesting, and that way you can see the entire conversation being played out on this channel without having to go to the other person's channel all the time. So I do realize that I do just use screenshots a lot, but that's fine. I mean, you know, I got my point across, I got my message out, and that was the whole point of it in the first place. But anyway, I love you guys, and don't forget to leave me a comment, and I will see you guys next time.